What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Crabs Cooking and Conversations. If you want to learn how I make my Cajun style shrimp and cheese grits, stay tuned. I'm going to show you the step-by-step process. Trust me, this recipe is going to bless your soul. Okay guys, let's get started here. So I always start out with my shrimp first. That way I can season the shrimp with my Creole seasonings, and it allows the shrimp time to marinate in those seasonings while I'm preparing everything else. So the first thing you want to do, you want to make sure that your shrimp are completely thawed, and then you want to go ahead and deshell them. Some people leave the tails on, but I prefer the tails off so that way I don't have any interruptions while I am eating my food. But it's whatever your preference is, tail on or tail off, it's completely up to you. Okay, now that we have all of our shrimp completely deshelled, now I'm just gonna go ahead and rinse them really well so I can prepare to season them and sit them in the refrigerator until I get ready to cook them. Okay, now that our shrimp are completely rinsed and drained of all the extra water, I'm gonna go ahead and season them with the Tony's Creole seasoning. I'm using the spice and herb today. I would typically use the original version, but my friends that I'm cooking for, they prefer spicy foods, so I figure I'd kick it up a notch. So I am using about 2 tablespoons right now of the Creole seasonings. Now I'm just going to go ahead and make sure the seasonings are evenly distributed before I put it aside into the refrigerator until I get ready for it later. But I did notice that I do need a little bit more seasoning because when seasoning the shrimp, you want them to have a darker color. So I ended up adding maybe about another tablespoon of the Creole seasonings to the shrimp. And what you see me doing here, I'm finding extra shells in my bowl, so I'm just discarding those down the sink. And also keep in mind that the Tony's seasoning is the only seasoning that we are putting on the shrimp that has salt. Everything else that we're going to use while cooking is just a fresh herb or a dried herb. And what I'm cooking today is about 4 pounds of shrimp, and the size that I'm using are the 13 to 15, which essentially means you get about 13 to 15 shrimp per pound. Okay, now that we have our shrimp all seasoned, we're gonna go ahead and put them in the refrigerator and move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step in the process for me is to go ahead and prepare my sausages. So I have the Eckrich smoked sausage and as well as the Eckrich Polish kielbasa. You can also use a spicy andouille sausage if you like, or even if you don't eat pork, you can substitute it for beef or even a turkey product. So I'm going to go ahead and slice these into small medallions and just combine them in the bowl and set them aside in the refrigerator until I am ready to cook them. Okay, now that I'm done slicing up my sausages, I'm gonna go ahead and wash off my knife and my cutting board so that way I can move on to the next step, and that is to cut up my fresh herbs for this dish. For the amount of shrimp and sausages that we have, we're gonna use the entire bunch of parsley. Today I am using the curly parsley. For this, you definitely want it to be fresh instead of the dried parsley. So I'm just gonna go ahead and give it a good rinse and try to shake off as much water that I can and just roughly chop it. Okay, now that our parsley is all rinsed and drained of all the water, again, we're just gonna roughly chop this and set it aside in a bowl. It doesn't have to be perfect. The only thing you do is just dice it up as fine as you want it. go in one direction and then go into the opposite direction, and it will definitely help. The next fresh herb that we are using in this dish is going to be basil. We're just going to take it and combine it in a bowl with our parsley. And also we're going to be using some ground thyme. You can use ground thyme or you can use fresh thyme. Thyme is so aromatic and strong, it doesn't matter if you use the dried or the fresh. And what you see there is the bowl of parsley with the basil already mixed in. So I am just going to sprinkle all of the thyme across the top. And that's about 2 tablespoons of ground thyme that we have there. All right, now it's time to put in some work. So how I make my grits, for every 1 cup of grits, you need 4 cups of liquid. So I am cooking 2 cups of grits, so I'm going to need 8 cups of liquids. I'm going to use 7 cups of water, and I'm going to reserve 1 cup so that I can put 1 cup of heavy cream into my grits. It's going to have them extra smooth and creamy. Okay, so to our 7 cups of water, we are going to add chicken bouillon cubes. Now here I only had 1 bouillon cube left, but that's okay because I had some chicken bouillon powder. And essentially it's the same thing, gonna do the same thing. It's gonna flavor the grits up really nicely for you. So now we have the 1 bouillon cube, and I am going to add 4 tablespoons of the chicken bouillon powder to the water. And then I'm gonna cover it and let this come to a full rolling boil. Okay, now that we have a full rolling boil on our water, it is time to add in our grits. So if you notice, I am using a wire whisk to whisk in my grits into my water. And I'm essentially doing this so that I don't have any lumps. You definitely want to keep on stirring your grits. And this is about the time where you want to start to lower the temperature on your grits because you don't want them to come back up to a full rolling boil. So if you had your water on medium-high heat to come to a boil, you want to definitely turn it down to a medium-low. So if your settings on your stove have numbers, so you definitely want it closer to the low setting than the medium, because again, the grits are going to get thicker. And like I said, with my grits, I continuously stir them. I cook, even though they're 5-minute grits, I cook my grits for at least about 20 minutes. So I can get the smooth and consistent taste that I like. Okay, so I left my grits a little high this time so I can show you guys. This is what you do not want to happen. You do not want them to be boiling, popping like this. You better ask Al Green what hot grits do to you. It'll change a sinning man to a pastor. Okay, let me stop. But you do notice I am wearing long sleeve shirts when I'm doing this because, hey, it's real. They will get on you, and it's not like hot water where it just rolls off. They are going to stick and they are going to burn you. Okay, so we're just going to keep on cooking the grits down before we add anything else. You definitely want to make sure that they have a smooth and consistent texture, so you have to taste them along the way to, one, make sure you have enough bouillon flavor. If you don't, this is the time you need to add it, but just keep on cooking until they are smooth. Okay, now that my grits have the taste, texture, and consistency that I'm looking for, it's time for me to add in my butter. And here I am adding about a half a stick of butter. I don't use margarine, I always use butter. I'm just gonna stir that in for a minute, and then I'm gonna move on to the next step, which is adding the cheese. Okay, so today we are using sharp cheddar cheese. I personally like the extra sharp, but the grocery store I went to didn't have it. So I am going to use about 2 cups of sharp cheese in it, and I'm just gonna mix this in really well. And if you notice, the cheese is definitely going to make your grits a lot more thicker. Just make sure you keep stirring because you do not want them to stick. Okay, now it's the time where you're going to add only half of the cup of heavy cream, and you're gonna mix it in really well. You're gonna let that combine and cook down for a minute before adding the second half of the heavy cream. Once you add the second half of the heavy cream to your grits, combine that really well, let it cook down for a couple of minutes, and then essentially you're gonna have the consistency that you want, and your grits will be ready, and set them to the side. This is the consistency that you're looking for. Alright, so on to the last phase of cooking. We are going to add oil to our hot pan, and then we're going to add our sausages to that pan, and we're going to cook them down for about 3 to 5 minutes, just long enough so we can brown them on each side before adding our shrimp. And with the oil, you can use any oil you like. You can use olive oil, avocado oil, or coconut oil. Okay, now that my sausages have browned to my liking, I'm going to go ahead and add my shrimp. And here I'm just going to combine the shrimp with the sausage and let them cook down for about a minute. And then I'm going to add my fresh herbs to this dish. I would typically use the entire amount of herbs, but because I no longer eat pork, I am cooking me some shrimp separately. So that's why I saved some of the herbs for my shrimp. And here I did add another tablespoon of ground thyme, because it's a certain earthiness, like a smell that I'm looking for, and I wasn't quite getting it, so I just added more thyme to it. Now is when we add our crushed red peppers to this dish. I only added a tablespoon to it, but if you don't like spice, you can definitely skip this step. But if you want spice, you can add either more to it, and you can even go a step further and add some cayenne pepper. Okay guys, at this point we are all done with making our Cajun shrimp and cheese grits. The next phase is just plating, eating, and enjoying with your family. Okay, to finish it off, I just topped it off with green onions. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with your family and friends. And if you tried the recipe, leave a comment below and let me know what you thought about it. Let me know some of the things you may have changed with it. And if you want to be fancy with it, you can add an over easy egg on top. It will be phenomenal. Thanks guys.